The last queen of Egypt. The sun dipped low over Alexandria, casting a golden hue on the marble columns of the royal palace. Inside those walls lived a woman whose name would echo through millennia. Cleopatra VII, Cleopatra, the last pharaoh of Egypt. Her reign had begun with promise and brilliance, but now, in the summer of 30 BCE, it stood on the brink of collapse. Cleopatra was not merely a queen. She was a strategist, a scholar, and a ruler of remarkable intellect. Fluent in several languages, she could speak to her subjects without interpreters, a rare skill among Greek-born rulers of Egypt. Her reign was defined by ambition, to restore Egypt's greatness and protect it from the growing shadow of Rome. But that same Rome would become the architect of her destruction. For years, Cleopatra had balanced between diplomacy and defiance. She formed alliances with the most powerful men of her age, first Julius Caesar, then Mark Antony. These relationships were not just romantic, but deeply political. Through Caesar, she regained her throne after civil war. Through Antony, she secured Egypt's independence, at least for a time. But Rome's politics were ruthless, and love in the world of empires was a dangerous weakness. By 31 BCE, Octavian, Caesar's ambitious heir, had turned against Antony and Cleopatra. Their forces clashed at the Battle of Actium, a massive naval confrontation off the coast of Greece. Octavian's disciplined fleet crushed their armies. Antony and Cleopatra fled back to Egypt, wounded in pride and power. The war was lost, but the final act of their story was yet to be written. As Roman ships drew closer to Alexandria, Cleopatra knew her empire was finished, yet she refused to surrender. In her palace, she fortified herself with her treasures, gathering what remained of her loyal guards. She ordered her ships burned, a defiant gesture to deny Octavian any spoils. Smoke rose from the harbor, and for a moment, it seemed as if Egypt itself wept. Mark Antony, her partner in both love and rule, was a broken man. News reached him that Cleopatra was dead. False news, spread by her own hand to test his loyalty. In despair, Antony fell on his sword. When she found him dying, Cleopatra had him carried to her chambers. His last breath left him in her arms. Their love, forged in ambition, ended in tragedy. Now alone, Cleopatra faced the inevitable. Octavian's legions marched through the city. Her palace, once the symbol of power and beauty, had become a prison. But Cleopatra still had her mind, and she intended to use it. Ancient sources describe the queen's final days with fascination. Plutarch, the Greek historian, wrote that she dressed in her royal robes and entertained Octavian's envoys with dignity, never appearing broken. She hoped to negotiate mercy for her children, especially Caesarion, her son with Julius Caesar, whom she believed to be the rightful heir of Rome. But Octavian had other plans. To him, Cleopatra was not just a defeated queen. She was a political threat. If she lived, she could rally Egypt's people or challenge his legitimacy through Caesarion. He planned to take her alive to Rome, to display her in chains during his triumph, a cruel custom of Roman victory. Cleopatra knew this humiliation awaited her. The thought of being paraded as a trophy before the same crowds who once cheered her lover Caesar was unbearable. Still, she played her role carefully. Octavian visited her in the palace. According to Roman accounts, he found her lying on a golden couch, wearing her crown, calm and composed. She flattered him, offered her wealth, even pretended to surrender. But behind her soft words, she was plotting. Cleopatra had always been a master of deception. For over 20 years, she had survived wars, betrayals, and shifting alliances. She understood the psychology of power. And now, she would turn that power one last time, to control her own fate. Historians describe her final chamber as both royal and tragic. A small room, heavy with incense and silence. Statues of Isis, the Egyptian goddess of rebirth, surrounded her. Perhaps she hoped that in death, she too would be reborn as divine. But there was another side to the story, one that has haunted historians for centuries. Was Cleopatra truly preparing for a noble suicide, or was something far darker at play? Some of her servants were seen leaving with strange containers, baskets of figs, one account says. Others mention that she requested a secret meeting with her physician. The guards, loyal to Octavian, kept their distance. By the next day, she would be found dead. But in this moment, before the tragedy, Cleopatra remained alive, proud and calculating. She wrote a final letter to Octavian, thanking him for his kindness and asking to be buried beside Antony. It was a queen's last command, written with steady hands. Then she dismissed her attendants. What happened next became one of the most debated moments in history. As night fell, the corridors of the palace grew quiet. The sea wind brushed through the open windows. Somewhere in those halls, Cleopatra prepared for her last act. Whether it was a carefully planned escape from disgrace or the result of a silent murder disguised as suicide, no one could ever prove. Her death would soon shock the ancient world. Octavian would claim victory, calling her end a suicide, a noble yet inevitable choice of a defeated queen. Poets would immortalize her as the woman who chose death over slavery, but the facts, even in her own time, didn't quite fit. No witness ever saw the snake, no guard ever confirmed how she died. The wounds described in ancient texts were inconsistent. Her body showed little sign of venom, and when the Roman physician examined her, he found evidence that hinted at poison, not from a serpent, but from human hands. The last queen of Egypt, the woman who ruled an empire and defied Rome, met her end behind locked doors. Whether she died by her own will or by the will of others, one truth remains. Cleopatra was not just a victim of history, she was its final author. As dawn rose over Alexandria, her guards found her lifeless body, dressed in royal robes, her crown still on her head. To the Romans, it was the end of an enemy. To Egypt, it was the end of an age. The last pharaoh was gone, and with her, the last breath of an ancient civilization faded into history. The image is iconic. A golden queen, serene and beautiful, reclines upon a couch. A basket of figs sits beside her. From within, a slender serpent rises, silent and deadly. It strikes once. Cleopatra, the last pharaoh of Egypt, accepts death with calm dignity, choosing poison over captivity. The story has echoed through art, literature, and cinema for over 2,000 years. Yet beneath this poetic image lies a troubling question. Did it ever really happen? The serpent story first appeared in Roman accounts written decades after Cleopatra's death. Plutarch, Suetonius, and Dio Cassius each repeated versions of it, but none claim to have seen the body themselves. Their accounts differ in key details. Some describe a single snake, others two. Some say she kept the snake hidden in figs, others that it was brought secretly in a jar. The only constant was the same conclusion. Cleopatra died from a venomous bite, her body unmarked except for a tiny wound on her arm. But as history reveals, the Romans had every reason to shape this narrative. Octavian, soon to be Emperor Augustus, wanted Cleopatra's death to appear as her own choice. It made him appear merciful and erased suspicion of foul play. A queen who chose death out of pride was easier to respect than a queen murdered by Rome. Thus, the image of Cleopatra and the asp became not only a legend but also a political convenience. Let us pause here and consider the details. Ancient Egypt was home to several species of venomous snakes, but the one most often linked to Cleopatra's death is the Egyptian cobra, Najahaje. A large and dangerous snake, it can deliver enough venom to kill an adult human within an hour. However, this theory faces a problem. A cobra's bite is rarely subtle. It causes swelling, bleeding, and severe pain. Yet the Roman reports describe Cleopatra's face as calm, her body unblemished. No witness ever mentioned the violent symptoms of a cobra's venom. Furthermore, the practical logistics are questionable. A full-grown Egyptian cobra can reach up to 8 feet in length. Hiding such a creature in a basket of figs would be almost impossible. The snake would have been restless, aggressive, or likely to escape. Even if Cleopatra's servants somehow managed it, the act would have required courage, precision, and an almost theatrical awareness of timing. Modern toxicologists point to another problem: the speed of death. Cleopatra was said to have died within moments of the bite. Yet even in the most severe snake bites, death takes time. The venom must travel through the bloodstream, attacking the nervous system. The process is painful and rarely instantaneous. Her peaceful expression in death contradicts what snake venom actually does to the human body. In 2010, a team of historians and forensic experts at the University of Manchester examined the ASP theory in detail. Their conclusion was firm: the cobra story is scientifically implausible. Instead, they proposed a simpler, more deliberate explanation. Cleopatra may have died by poison prepared by her own physician. Ancient Egyptians were masters of toxins. They knew how to extract lethal compounds from plants like hemlock, aconite, and opium. A mixture of these could cause a swift and relatively painless death, far more consistent with the ancient descriptions. Still, there remains a deeper layer to the mystery. Roman chroniclers mention that 2 of Cleopatra's most trusted attendants were found dead beside her. If she truly used a live snake, would it have bitten 3 people without causing chaos or noise? The bodies of the servants bore the same calm stillness as their queens. This suggests a controlled dose of poison, not a frantic attack by a serpent. And yet, despite all evidence, the snake remained the perfect symbol for her story. In Egyptian culture, the cobra, known as uraeus, was sacred. It adorned the crowns of pharaohs, representing divine authority and protection. By choosing the serpent as her instrument of death, Cleopatra's myth was elevated from tragedy to ritual. She was not merely dying, she was transforming, returning to the realm of gods. This symbolism appealed deeply to later historians and artists who preferred beauty over brutality. Over time, the image of Cleopatra and the snake became art's obsession. Painters of the Renaissance portrayed her reclining gracefully, bare-shouldered, her eyes half-closed in peace. Poets described her as the woman who died with a smile. Shakespeare immortalized the scene in Antony and Cleopatra, writing, "With her death she makes defect perfection." To the world, Cleopatra became the embodiment of sensuality and dignity in death. But the truth behind that image was slowly erased. Roman propaganda also played a powerful role. Octavian wanted the world to believe that Cleopatra was proud, vain, and driven to suicide by despair. This made her the author of her downfall, not Rome's victim. He displayed her treasures in his victory parade, but not her body. By controlling her story, he controlled her legacy. To admit that she might have been murdered would tarnish his triumph. And so, the myth of the asp endured, repeated by every historian who followed Rome's lead. Even today, Egyptologists debate what truly happened in that sealed chamber. Some believe the snake theory hides a political assassination. Others argue Cleopatra indeed took her own life but used poison instead of venom. The historian Stacy Schiff, in her acclaimed biography Cleopatra, A Life, notes that her death was an act of calculation, not passion. Cleopatra, she suggests, understood that dying on her own terms would preserve her legend forever. It is also possible that the truth lies between both extremes. Cleopatra may have planned her death, but the method was altered or assisted by those around her, perhaps even under Octavian's quiet supervision. A queen's suicide would serve him perfectly. A murder would not. What remains clear is that the serpent story became one of the most effective pieces of political theater in history. It gave Rome a martyr to admire, not an enemy to fear. It turned Cleopatra from a ruler into a myth, a figure of fascination rather than rebellion. In art, in literature, and in collective memory, the serpent never left her side. Whether real or symbolic, it slithered into history as the ultimate image of female defiance, beauty facing death, power yielding only to choice. But behind the poetry lies a harder truth. The asp may never have existed. The serpent was a story, crafted to make sense of a death that no one dared to question too closely. And perhaps that was the true genius of Cleopatra. Even in death, she commanded the narrative, forcing history to remember her not as a captive, but as a queen who met her fate with grace and control. After Cleopatra's death, Rome was quick to control the narrative. Octavian, soon to be known as Augustus Caesar, wanted the world to believe that the last pharaoh had died by her own hand, defeated and broken. The image of Cleopatra as a tragic lover, a woman who chose death over humiliation, served his purpose perfectly. It erased any suspicion of foul play and solidified his reputation as a merciful conqueror. But Rome's official story has cracks. Ancient records mention that Octavian's men were the first to reach Cleopatra's chamber. They claimed she was already dead, lying peacefully on her golden couch, with two of her maids lifeless beside her. The famous serpent, the asp, was said to be hidden among flowers or a basket of figs. Yet no one actually saw the snake. No Roman soldier reported being bitten. No snake was ever found. This raises questions. Could a snake have killed 3 people so quickly and silently? Her physician, Olympus, later wrote that he was not allowed to examine the body. Some historians believe Cleopatra may have used poison hidden in a hairpin or ointment rather than a snake. But even that doesn't explain the presence of her servants' bodies. It seems too convenient, too perfectly staged. Roman propaganda artists soon spread statues and paintings of Cleopatra holding the serpent. Poets romanticized her death, calling her the queen who embraced the asp like a lover. These images shaped Western imagination for centuries, turning Cleopatra from a ruler into a myth. But if the serpent never existed, then her entire story was rewritten to serve Rome's power. In truth, Octavian had every reason to eliminate her quietly. Cleopatra was more than a queen. She was a symbol of resistance, wealth, and Eastern power. As long as she lived, Egypt could remain a center of rebellion. By framing her death as suicide, Octavian destroyed her influence while avoiding the scandal of murdering a monarch. It was political theater at its finest, and the world believed it. Modern historians have begun to re-examine these accounts. Some now suggest Cleopatra may have been poisoned by Roman agents under Octavian's orders. The speed with which her body was buried and the secrecy surrounding her tomb only deepened the suspicion. There was no public mourning, no royal funeral procession. Her story was buried as quickly as her body. In this version, Cleopatra didn't die as a defeated lover, but as the victim of a calculated political assassination. A ruler silenced to ensure the rise of an empire. The serpent became a symbol not of choice, but of deception. And yet the mystery persists because Cleopatra herself wanted it that way. She once said, "I will not be led in triumph." Whether by her own hand or by Rome's, she achieved that. Her death denied her enemies their greatest victory, to parade her alive through the streets of Rome. In death, she controlled her legend. But as historians dig deeper, another question rises. If Cleopatra was murdered, who ordered it, and who carried it out? The trail leads us back to the secret chambers of the palace and to the man who gained everything from her death, Octavian himself. As Octavian's troops secured Alexandria, Cleopatra was held under what they called protective custody. She was confined to her private quarters in the royal mausoleum, surrounded not by her loyal guards, but by Roman soldiers. Octavian visited her once, perhaps twice, to ensure her cooperation. Records suggest that during these encounters, Cleopatra appeared calm, resigned, even graceful. Yet behind her composed face, she was plotting her final move, or so Rome wanted the world to believe. Roman accounts portray Cleopatra as a woman obsessed with death, preparing herself for suicide. But Egyptian sources tell a different story. Temple records indicate that Cleopatra had been sending secret messages to allies in Nubia, hoping for military support. She also requested that her son Caesarion, the child she had with Julius Caesar, be smuggled out of Egypt. These are not the actions of a woman planning to die. They are the actions of a ruler fighting to preserve her dynasty. But Caesarion never made it to safety. Roman historians later claimed he was too many Caesars, implying that Octavian had him executed. This act effectively ended the Ptolemaic bloodline and secured Rome's claim over Egypt. With Caesarion dead, Cleopatra's death became not just a tragedy, but a necessity for Rome's political stability. Several Roman officers were present at the palace the night she died. Among them was Proculeius, Octavian's trusted envoy. He had been ordered to watch her closely, yet somehow she managed to die under his supervision. This contradiction has puzzled historians for centuries. How could a prisoner under Roman watch commit suicide so neatly, leaving behind no struggle, no witnesses, and a perfectly formed myth? Some believe Proculeius was ordered to ensure Cleopatra's death discreetly and without spectacle. Poison could have been slipped into her cosmetics, wine, or ointments. The famous asp might have been invented later to dramatize the story. Octavian, after all, needed a version of her death that was poetic, not brutal. A queen killed by a snake would make a better tale than one strangled or poisoned by Roman hand. When Octavian returned to Rome after Cleopatra's death, he was no longer just a general. He was now the undisputed master of the Roman world. Within a year, the Senate granted him the title Augustus, marking the birth of the Roman Empire. Cleopatra's death had paved his path to absolute power. To the Roman public, he presented himself as the savior who ended chaos, tamed Egypt, and avenged Rome. But behind the pageantry and parades lay a carefully constructed deception, one of history's earliest political cover-ups. Rome's version of events was clean and noble. Cleopatra, they said, could not bear defeat. Rather than face humiliation in Octavian's triumph, she chose to die like a queen. The story of the asp, the venomous snake that ended her life, spread rapidly. Poets, painters, and historians immortalized it. To the Roman mind, it was poetic justice. The seductive queen who once charmed Julius Caesar and Mark Antony met her end by her own hand. The narrative served Rome perfectly, turning a messy political murder into a tragic legend. But even in antiquity, not everyone believed it. Greek chroniclers who lived closer to Egypt questioned the official account. They pointed out inconsistencies. No snake was ever found in her chamber, and the supposed bite marks were never confirmed. Some claimed the snake was too large to have entered unseen. Others noted that 2 of her maids also died beside her, likely from the same poison, which suggests something shared, not a reptile's bite. Modern historians and scientists now lean toward assassination. The motive is too strong and the timing too precise. Cleopatra's death benefited only one man, Octavian. With her gone, there would be no rival claim to Egypt, no Roman sympathy for the fallen queen, and no need to justify the execution of Caesarion, her son with Julius Caesar. Her disappearance allowed Octavian to rewrite the narrative, to make himself the hero of a story he may have secretly authored. Archaeologists and forensic experts have attempted to trace physical evidence. Ancient accounts describe Cleopatra's tomb as filled with gold, pearls, and her personal artifacts. Despite decades of searching, no one has found it. Many suspect Octavian ordered it hidden to prevent her resting place from becoming a symbol of resistance. Others believe it lies beneath modern Alexandria, buried under layers of silt and sea. Without her body, the mystery remains unsolved. Cleopatra's image has also been distorted by centuries of propaganda. Roman writers painted her as a manipulative temptress, not a skilled ruler. Yet surviving Egyptian records show a different portrait. She spoke 9 languages, personally managed Egypt's economy, and led her navy into battle. She was the last monarch of the Ptolemaic dynasty, a woman who tried to preserve Egypt's independence in a world dominated by Rome. Her death symbolized more than personal tragedy. It marked the fall of a civilization that had stood for 3,000 years. In recent years, researchers have re-examined the chemistry of snake venom and ancient poisons. The conclusion is clear. No known Egyptian snake could kill 3 people quickly and quietly as the story describes. The symptoms reported, fainting, calmness, and minimal suffering, are inconsistent with snakebite deaths, which are agonizing and drawn out. Instead, these signs point toward a fast neurotoxin or a concoction made from opium, wolfsbane, and hemlock, a formula known to Roman apothecaries. Octavian's propaganda machine ensured that the truth would fade. In Rome, poets like Horace and Virgil praised his victory, depicting Cleopatra as a symbol of decadence defeated by Roman virtue. Her story became moral theater, a warning against ambition and foreign influence. Her real legacy as a strategist, linguist, and visionary leader was buried under layers of myth. But time has begun to peel those layers back. Today, historians see her not as the scheming queen of Rome's imagination, but as one of the most intelligent and politically savvy rulers of the ancient world. Her so-called suicide reads more like a forced choice, the final act in a play written by her enemies. If Cleopatra was murdered, then Octavian committed one of history's most perfect crimes. He removed his last opponent, inherited Egypt's immense wealth, and gained moral superiority by pretending to honor her death. He built an empire on a foundation of lies, wrapped in poetry and legend. 2,000 years later, the question still lingers. Did Cleopatra truly end her life, or was she silenced by the empire she defied? The absence of her tomb keeps the mystery alive. Somewhere beneath the shifting sands of Egypt, her body may still hold the answer, the evidence of what really happened that night in Alexandria. Until that day, history stands divided. Cleopatra remains both victim and legend, a queen who defied Rome, and perhaps paid the price for being too powerful, too clever, and too free for her time. A Roman report claims that when Octavian was informed of her death, he marveled at her courage and ordered her buried with royal honors beside Antony. But the speed of her burial raised suspicion. Her body was sealed within hours, her tomb guarded, and the site's exact location concealed. Octavian then returned to Rome, where he celebrated his victory as the man who brought peace to the Mediterranean. Cleopatra's image was displayed on coins, her death retold as a moral lesson about pride, passion, and downfall. But Cleopatra's attendants told a different story before they vanished from record. They spoke of strange men entering her chamber, of a locked door, and of silence that followed. One claimed to have seen a Roman officer wiping a small golden vial clean before leaving the room. None of these accounts were ever officially recorded in Roman history, but they appear in later Egyptian scrolls found in Thebes centuries later. Modern science adds to the intrigue. Researchers analyzing ancient descriptions of her symptoms, sudden stillness, pale skin, minimal bleeding, argue that these do not match snakebite poisoning. They align more closely with fast-acting toxins like hemlock or cyanide-based mixtures known to Roman assassins. If this theory is true, Cleopatra's death was not an act of despair, but a silencing. Her murder erased the last obstacle between Octavian and absolute power. The myth of her suicide gave Rome legitimacy, while the truth was buried beneath centuries of imperial propaganda. In the quiet marble halls of Alexandria's ruins, the echoes of that night still linger. Was Cleopatra truly holding a serpent, Or was she holding the poisoned cup Rome forced into her hand? The evidence leans toward conspiracy, but the final truth remains hidden in the dust of her lost tomb, a secret that even time seems unwilling to reveal. You said,